Thanks for tuning in to more NFL talk and college football talk. Week 9 already, if you can believe it, in the college football season here on the OFN Today with Marc Lawrence of PlaybookSports.com. Mark, can you believe it? We're almost we're already into week 9 in college football. It goes by too fast.
Well, it's flying by, Greg, right now, but they say it does that just when you're having fun. We're having fun with this football season, and before we get to the colleges, just a quick note that they will be releasing the first college football playoff poll this week, so that'll be a lot of controversy between now and our next show.
Yeah, if you look at it right now in college football, there's really only one team that is like this dominant team, and it's Georgia. And we know Cincinnati, that's going to be the key, is where Cincinnati's going to fit in. Other than that, isn't it pretty wide open as far... I don't look at rankings myself. I'm glad that they don't do this until now, because I just think most of this stuff is just kind of, I don't know. It's for, I guess it's for talk show radio, banter, but I can't get into it. So I haven't even looked myself. I have no idea, other than I know Georgia should be number 1 and Cincinnati's got to be in the mix. Other than that, who knows where Alabama and Ohio State and all these other teams are going to be, because they haven't been overly impressive.
Well, there's a team out there that if they win out, it'll be very, very difficult to leave them out of the college football playoff, and not one word has been mentioned about this team.
And it's in the Power 5 or the Group of 5?
It's in the Power 5. If they win out, they will be in the talk. They will most likely be in the playoff, and they haven't even been whispered about as we speak on the show here just yet.
That's interesting. Why? So it has to be an SEC team, shouldn't it? Or
No,
are you talking about Oklahoma?
No, I'm talking about an ACC team.
Oh, ACC team. What do you mean, like one of those teams? What do you mean, like Wake Forest?
Like Wake Forest. What would you do if they win out, they go undefeated, they win the ACC championship, and they don't make the playoff? They lose out to Cincinnati. It's like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, I know,
Power
right?
5 undefeated team loses out to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So,
you know how it all most of the time it all kind of works into its own, but it would be interesting. Right. Yes. Hopefully a couple of other upsets would occur and we'd get Wake Forest and Cincinnati in the Final Four. We would like that. That would be awesome.
Well, I don't think the television stations would like that. No.
Screw them. That would be a good excuse for them to hurry up the process of adding more teams then.
Yes,
we can't have this. We have to have more teams.
Yeah, we got to get some depth in here.
Yes.
Right.
So as soon as that starts harming the pocket strings, then we know it's that's when they decide to make some moves. But look, we're going to get more than 4 teams soon. Whether it's in a couple of years or 4 years or 6 years, it's going to happen. It should have happened a while ago. But again, I said this like about 10 years ago, and I think we're finally starting to get to that point. Is once you start getting rid of all the older, long time, old school people in charge, and they're slowly moving on, they're slowly retiring, and then the young guys are moving into their positions, this is why we're going to get the new kind of way of doing things.
Right. When we get those 70 and 80-year-olds out of there and we get the younger crew in there, that's when we're going to open things up. So it'll happen sooner than later, believe me.
Well, some might be like in their 80s and 90s, actually.
Yes, they might be. The good old boys.
That's the good old boys, yeah. All right, so, but NFL, let's talk first about what happened last night. And was that not, and look, it came down to a freaky play at the end, but was that not like the perfect... It almost felt like I stole money on the money line by Vegas offering 2-1 with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And I understand why it happened, especially when most people felt Adams wasn't going to play most of the week. But then when there was some talk about Hopkins not playing and J.J. Watt wasn't going to play, I was just very surprised that line did not shoot down much further. So a lot of people, not enough people wagered on the Packers last night. Is that how it happened? Or is it that they were, once you're up to 6.5, it's just, and it's a Thursday game, there's just not enough time to move that line down?
Well, there were other receivers for Green Bay. They had 3 wide receivers out. So
yeah, sure.
They were really decimated at that position. So you couldn't really come back down too far off of that because you begin creating spread situations, middling situations. Because what went to 6.5 was bought up to 7, and then you take it back down to 3.5, and people buy it to 3, and all of a sudden you've got 3s and 7s working in a football game, and that's the last thing the odds makers would ever want to happen or allow to happen. Not only from a betting standpoint, but also from a teasing standpoint, because you can tease those games down past the 3 and up over the 7. You could have a dog in that particular game that's taking points on both sides of the equation.
Sure.
So, that wasn't going to happen. The line just wouldn't permit that. What happened in the end of the football game, I think, was sort of a script written out of Hollywood for a NFL football movie. The way that it did play out, Aaron Rodgers just proving what Aaron Rodgers is all about.
Yeah.
And finding it and willing his way a team to win the football game. And, A.J. Green falling asleep in the end zone on that final pass was kind of like the shocking ending to a good novel in a football game. So if you had Green Bay like you did and like I did, we were all thrilled. If you ended up having Arizona, you're probably a little bit peed-o'd about the result.
Yeah, I mean, because look, again, it could have easily been an Arizona win. They could have stole that win, and they still wouldn't have covered. But the risk was one of those where you just say, because I was deciding, do I do as a 5-star or a money line play? And I just said to myself, how do I not take the Packers here on the money line? How you just don't get Aaron Rodgers at 2-1 on the money line. So because of that, and it wasn't like also, and look, I'm still not sure about Arizona. That and you kind of felt that there would be a little pressure on them being undefeated, the only team left, and they don't normally perform at their best as a home favorite. We've seen that over the years. So I can see that, because I think if Green Bay is playing, it's kind of interesting. Who do you think? Because Ryan Dunleavy believes that the 5 best teams in the NFL are in the NFC. I don't believe that. And the reason is because I really do believe in Tennessee and Buffalo. I believe that those 2 teams, especially right now, the way their offenses are playing, I don't think the Packers could stop either one of those offenses, that Packer defense. I think they'd get run over. Aaron Rodgers would have to put up 45 points to beat. He could do it, but so I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that the AFC is every bit as good as the NFC. I just think that it kind of appears that the NFC, because of the Rams and Arizona's undefeated, and you have Aaron Rodgers and the Cowboys are off to such a great start, just appears that they're much better than the AFC. But I don't think that's the case when you're talking about the top couple of teams from the AFC.
You can rest assured there's going to be a leveling out factor for the NFC between now when we speak and the end of the football season, because those teams you mentioned aren't going to stay on this same exact parallel run that they've taken themselves to get to this point. On the other side of the football, teams out of the AFC, you've got other teams involved here, maybe that have disappointed. Kansas City, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But you've got other teams here that, if you take a look at Pro Football Focus, and they do a terrific job because they basically do a lot of gauging and measuring by metrics and by analytics. Their number 2 ranked overall team in the National Football League this year is the Cleveland Browns.
Okay,
so here's a 4-3 football team. You say to yourself, well, how could they be their second best team? Well, the reason they're their second best team is because they grade every player on every play that they do, and they're graded in performance levels. So the Cleveland Browns just happen to be a MASH unit for a football team, banged up and injured. So what happens when that MASH unit ends up coming and rolling around in December and they're healthy, they're all there?
Yes.
Suddenly, you've got a football team that will be emerging out of the AFC and end up becoming a formidable opponent for the NFC side of things. So, there's that part of the equation here. And at that point, Cleveland will become a better team than Tennessee, a better, well-rounded football team. So there's some cases that could be made for the AFC. And right now, what they tend to do in Vegas is they'll put what they call a blind Super Bowl lineup and price the conference, the NFC over the AFC. And right now, the NFC is probably the 3 or 3.5 point favorite on the blind, depending upon who gets there. But I think that'll come down between now and the end of the season as the AFC begins to emerge.
Okay, so taking a look at the NFL heading into the weekend on Sunday, and we can kind of start with the Super Bowl champs, the defending champs, Tampa Bay, because they're on a nice little roll, even though they've been inconsistent on the road. And maybe that's not a good word. Maybe the word is they haven't been very good covering the spread on the road because they are 0-3 against the spread as road favorites this season. And then you flip the Saints, who, I mean, we've been doing this long enough. Even just me focusing in on everything in the newsletters and in the guide, that you know already that anytime the Saints are a dog, that it's a good spot based on the history and Sean Payton and everything that we've seen as far as the data. Look, they've covered 10 straight as division dogs of 3 or more, and they're 2-0 straight up and against the spread as a dog this year. So look, I don't know if they're going to win the game, but they're getting, I think it's now down to 4.5, something like that. Started 5.5, so it is coming down. But I still think if you can get 5, and who knows if it'll go back up, I still think it's a good spot to take the Saints.
I think it's a great spot to take the Saints this particular week. Number one, as you mentioned here, Tampa Bay has yet to cover the number out on the road when laying points this football season. But more importantly, what you've got in New Orleans are two things. Number one, Sean Payton, their head coach, again, terrific in revenge and terrific as an underdog. That revenge happens to be being knocked out of the NFC playoffs last year by Tampa Bay. So this is the first rematch for New Orleans since they've had this opportunity to get back at Tampa. Another situation inside the game that I think favors the Saints is the Jameis Winston inside-out look at this football contest. This is his first crack back at his former team, the former team that gave up on him.
Yeah, good point.
Yes. So now here he is at home, to take on these guys, these defending Super Bowl champions who the betting public cannot get enough of because Tom Brady, he seems to be getting younger rather than older with each passing game. I think this is a great situational handicap for New Orleans in the football contest here. I like them plus the points, and I will also be playing them on the money line in the game.
And yeah, because that revenge number is 18-2 against the spread.
Yes.
In revenge division games, when the Saints are a dog or a favorite of less than 4. That's a pretty good number. That's a healthy 18-2.
That's a real strong number in a football game like this. And a lot of it is because, as we mentioned here, about Sean Payton, who's a terrific coach. He's one of the most reliable coaches when it comes to handicapping NFL football games from a coaching perspective and a coaching side. So I think, again, with Tom Brady off his 600th career touchdown, all the hype, all the media, so forth and whatnot here, this is a great spot for New Orleans on Sunday.
Okay, now we're going to stay in the South and talk about the game that's one of my top picks, and that's Atlanta. Now, it's not going to be a 5 or a 4, but I have them as a nice little 3-star, mainly because of the way that both teams are playing. Atlanta is just finding ways to win, which right now they're just feeling good about themselves. They're confident, and anytime Matt Ryan is in a groove, he proved it against Miami last week, that even when they blew that lead, he was like, okay, I'm going to march down the field and I'm going to set my team up in field goal position. And hey, if I needed a touchdown, I probably could have scored a touchdown if I needed to. And there you go. Now, they're doing it against teams that are struggling, but that's exactly what Carolina is. There is probably no team that is struggling or has a lack of confidence more in the NFL this week than Carolina, based on they have all of a sudden understood what I've been saying for a while, this ridiculousness about Sam Darnold and, his hot start he got off to. That's because he had Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. And, that goes a long way. And I said it in the beginning of the season. They do not have a good offensive line. And when you take McCaffrey out and the offensive line then gets exposed and Sam Darnold gets exposed and their confidence is just, when you get blown out by a team that had no confidence whatsoever in the Giants, then I can't imagine how Carolina is going to be in this football game unless Atlanta just doesn't show up. It's a home game. They haven't been home for a while. And they're also 0-2 straight up and against the spread at home this year, the Falcons. That's the only thing that I'm worried about. But on top of the fact that Atlanta has dominated the series over the last 3 years is another reason I feel confident in giving 3 points in this game.
I'd make a parallel like this. You got two trains passing on opposite tracks. One of them is heading in a good direction, the other going in a south direction. And as you mentioned, Carolina couldn't be playing any worse right now than they are. After opening up the season 3-0, straight up into the money with McCaffrey in the lineup. They're 0-4 straight up against the money without him. It's just black and white for the Carolina Panthers. So that puts all the pressure on Sam Darnold, who is proving he is not a good quality quarterback for the National Football League. He was so bad last week that he was pulled from the football game. And I'm not talking pulled just because they weren't putting points on the board. I'm talking pulled because he was making horrible decisions in the football game and throwing terrible passes. So they go to Philip Walker, the football player that used to play in the XFL, and he stunk up the joint. He was 3 for 14. So suddenly, Carolina has a quarterback from hell problem going on here right now, which means they'll probably at some point, although they're denying it, will be in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, when and if he's ever going to be eligible. But for the meantime, today, they're a team that's in total disarray at the quarterback position. Matt Ryan, like you mentioned, I think it's a great point. When he gets hot, he's hot. Jerry Reed, when you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. And Matt Ryan fits that right to the epitome, to a bill, doing just that. The Birds are playing really good football right now. They're 3-3 on the football season here. A better record than the Carolina Panthers, and that's why they've gone from the dog to the favorite in the football game. And I think the move is 100% spot on. I like the Falcons with you.
Now, you had just mentioned before, when we were talking about the top teams in the NFL, that Pro Football Focus has a specific team ranked pretty high at 4-3, and that happens to be my 5-star pick of the week, the Cleveland Browns. And when I was initially looking at this game, I was like, yeah, okay, I like Cleveland, and it was sort of like, just, when you go over your initial run of picks, they were okay. They were my initial run, but I didn't even think for a minute that I was going to make them one of my top picks or my top overall pick. But then the more I started thinking about it, the more I just started realizing, yeah, I mean, they're just better than Pittsburgh. And I don't care if Case Keenum's playing. Case Keenum can start a few games, and he's getting Chubb back. He's getting his other offensive tackle back. So the offensive line is now completely healthy again. So, yeah, Hunt's not there, but that's okay. They can still win without Hunt for a few games. So their offense is now pretty much healthy. And they're playing a Pittsburgh team that, yeah, all right, when they play below average teams, they're okay. But they have to look. The Buffalo game, week 1, means nothing. Everybody understands week 1 means nothing. I understand how Mike Tomlin is as an underdog and all that, but the fact is he's just going to continue to be in these underdog spots now more and more, which means he's going to lose them more and more because he doesn't have a good team. He doesn't have that team that he used to have when they were one of the top teams, and then we're a dog. Hey, you know what? We're going to step up and we're going to prove people wrong because we have the talent. They don't have the talent like they had in prior years. So I'm not afraid of any of those past Mike Tomlin spots in this specific situation. So look, this is a big game for both teams, huge game for Cleveland. I just think they're a much better team, and I only have to give up 3 points at home.
Well, if you put tape over the names of these two football teams and just looked at the game for what it is and the way it sets up, you might want to make a case for Pittsburgh here. Just given the fact that, number one, they do have revenge from being knocked out by Cleveland in the playoffs last year. This is a bitter rivalry that they've dominated in the past. I mean, absolutely dominated, beat them from pillar to post, Pittsburgh has in the past. But this is not the same Cleveland Browns football team that we talked about them dominating in the past. I know they're beat up. They do have Nick Chubb coming back. They've got Jack Conklin coming back on that offensive line, like you mentioned. And even Baker Mayfield has taken practices and snaps with the first team all week. Yeah. So I think he's going to be back here as well. And I want to just throw this little commentary out there. There's a couple of people that I've talked to throughout the week that seem to think that Cleveland's not any worse off with Case Keenum than they are with Baker Mayfield. And that's absolute garbage. Case Keenum is a serviceable backup quarterback.
Yes.
There's a reason he's a backup quarterback. It's because he doesn't do the things that starting quarterbacks can do. He can't throw the ball. He's got a horrible arm. He can't go long down the field. He's just serviceable. And so if the Browns have to go that way, they'll live with that because they'll design their game plan around him. They won't win the game because of Case Keenum, but they probably won't lose the game because of him as well. So if Cleveland does get all these personnel back, these people we talked about, they're going to end up being a different look football team coming into the contest here. And I like the look of the Cleveland Browns football team. When they're healthy, like they were the first month of the football season, they were playing as good as
Oh,
any
yeah.
team in the National Football League.
Yep.
Because they're talented, they're deep, they've got this talent. But now there's still some question marks here. Jadeveon Clowney, again, questionable. Denzel Ward, questionable. So you have to deal with the cards you're dealt, and move on ahead doing just that. And Kevin Stefanski, I think, was a terrific hire for this football program here, and he'll deal with that and do it with what the personnel that he's got on the field here. I like Cleveland in the football game. I think they're the much better football team. I know Mike Tomlin has been a good underdog in his career, as has Ben Roethlisberger. They work together in a tandem doing just that. But the more talented team is the Cleveland Browns here. And yes, of the two teams, Pittsburgh needs this more because they're trailing. And Cleveland does have Cincinnati up on deck next week. So if they lose the game, they could probably make ground up against Cincinnati next week.
I don't know what. Yeah, it's not.
They're not worried about next week, okay? They're worried about.
Well, that's not. Remember, Cincinnati. This is a different year.
Yeah, it is a different year, and the number one seed of the AFC, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, so can't think like that anymore.
No, but
take care of business this week. Yeah, just in case.
That will give Cleveland that much more focus next week against Cincinnati. Believe me, okay?
Yeah.
But today, Cleveland Browns are the better football team. I like them in this football game, and I think they'll end up winning and covering the spread. And if Baker Mayfield plays, I think Cleveland will be even that much more impressive.
Now, yeah, because I think it's interesting because if Mayfield, let's say he starts, and we hear today he's going to start, does the line move a half a point?
That's the strange thing you mentioned here, because this is what got me off on the Case Keenum tangent here, is that there's some people that I really respect in the business in Las Vegas that set odds. And a lot of them were telling me that with Mayfield or without Mayfield, with Keenum, there's only a 1-point move in the quarterback.
Yeah.
And I said, that's rubbish. That's garbage. Case Keenum is not, Mayfield's not 1 point better than is Case Keenum. But a lot of that is not so much Mayfield is against Keenum as it is the style and the design of the game plan of the Cleveland Browns. They love to pound the ball down your throat.
Yes.
They run the ball. They'll throw short passes and do all those types of things. So a 1 point adjustment for Keenum over Mayfield, I think that's a wrong incorrection that needs to be made. Nonetheless, here, Mayfield is a fiery leader for this football team. While he hasn't taken the team to the promised land just yet, there have been a multitude of reasons. This team has been battered, beat up, and so forth and whatnot, and he's been part of that equation. So let's wait and see when December rolls around and see where the Cleveland Browns are, and I think they'll be that AFC team to watch going down the stretch.
And again, that's why I think that the odds were set the way they were, because they kind of felt, too, that everybody's coming, all the necessary parts of what makes Cleveland's offense go, besides quarterback, was returning. And even though Mayfield's a much better quarterback than Keenum, let's just be honest. If Mayfield didn't have the luxury of this offensive line and the running game, it wouldn't make him look as good as he can look at times. So he's a good quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback. He's just not. But he's definitely better than Case Keenum. There's no question about that. But see, that's why there was no way I was going to make this a 5-star pick. If Conklin didn't return and Chubb didn't return, then I would have just stayed away and I would have picked Cleveland, but I never would have put him as one of my top picks. And now there's even a chance that Mayfield plays. So I just think this is one of those games where Cleveland understands how big this is. They're going to play this game like it's a playoff game. And when you do that, and you know your team, when you know you're going to wager money on a team that will not lose focus, that's all you can ask for. You say, okay, I'm not going to put money on the LA Chargers against Baltimore and have them play like a high school team and take the week off. I know Cleveland is going to come to play on Sunday, and I also know they're better than Pittsburgh, talent-wise.
One more closing note on the Baker Mayfield quarterback situation. You say he is not an elite quarterback. Not yet, he's not, but he has the potential to become that. Case Keenum does not have that chance.
Yes.
Does not have that chance at all. So, again, that's all going to be in the maturation of Cleveland and where they go moving forward once they're healthy. But today, against Pittsburgh, they will be fully focused for this game.
And look, if Pittsburgh wins the game, it's going to be an opportunity for them to prove to everybody that they're for real.
Yes, it will.
So go ahead and do it. Prove us wrong and prove that you're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Okay, next up is going to be one of my other top picks, and that's New England. And sort of like the Saints, when I took this game a couple of weeks ago, I take these lines like usually on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, but the lines have dropped the last 24, 48 hours. New England's now like Saints, more like a 4.5 kind of point favorite. I had them at 5.5. But either way, I still like the Patriots in this spot. And I'm going to tell you why. And look, I know the Chargers are not going to play like they were against Baltimore. I understand that because they had already packed their bags for the extra week. They were, hey, we just had a nice little run, and maybe the inexperience of the coaching staff and the players, and they just forgot that they had a game against Baltimore. So I know that's not going to be the team we're going to see. But based on my history, why I'm taking the Patriots. They have beaten the Chargers 5 straight up and against the spread. They beat them last year 45-0, and I'm getting 5 points. So I'm taking that. I know, Matt Jones is there and Cam Newton's not there, but I don't care. I like the way Matt Jones is playing right now. So Cam Newton was terrible last year. Look, I think this is going to be a really good football game. Patriots could lose the game. I could still get the cover on this one. And I think this is going to be a one-score game either way, and I'm willing to take the chance because I also think New England has a chance to win the game. I was thinking about the upset because they're getting 2-1, but I felt a lot more comfortable getting close to 6 points at the time, and that's why I took the Patriots.
All good reasons. I can completely understand your thinking and your logic and your theory. But if you were to walk into the Charger locker room, you might see posters all about saying 45-0.
Yeah.
45-0, 45-0. A reminder for the players who are coming off that bad loss against Baltimore 2 weeks ago.
That was like 45-0, yeah.
Yes, it could have well been. And they have a week of rest to get ready for this football contest. My biggest concern for New England is, as I mentioned in the newsletter here, Andrew Siciliano from the Red Zone, I love his phrase, they put up a 50-burger last week. And the Bill Belichick football teams, it's only 9 times that his teams have scored 50 points or more in his long career. And they haven't fared very well the next game. And it's largely because it's called a regression to the mean. It's atypical for a New England football team to put up 50. And that was 50 with Tom Brady and not being able to climb back up out of that to that level the next football game. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the 45-0 and the rest for the Chargers here. I'm not going to be to the game. I'm going to use those for reasons to keep me out of New England. So I'll be cheering for you on your New England side of the football game, but I'm going to pass on this contest.
Okay, now let's turn our attention to college. By the way, the Dallas-Minnesota line, when I took them a few days ago, they were favored by 2. They're now a dog by 2, and that's because of Dak Prescott, right? We don't know his status right now?
It's because of Dak Prescott. He himself admitted he doesn't know if he'll be ready to play in a football game. That's a little bit unusual because most players, quarterbacks will say, I'm going to play. I'm going to play. And, it's not their decision. Obviously, it's the doctor's decisions and the team trainers. But he says he doesn't know if he'll be able to play.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
No, it's not at all. And the other thing, just a little sidebar note here, the other team that's ranked number 1 by Pro Football Focus as the best team in the National Football League season to date is the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been very impressive.
Yes, they have. They've done nothing wrong. So here you got a couple of football teams that maybe Dallas has overachieved for sure this year. The Browns have perhaps underachieved, but a surprise. Dallas number 1, Cleveland number 2.
Okay, now let's talk college football. And the big win last week for me was that Pitt win over Clemson. And I wanted to start off with with both of those teams this week. Once again, Pickett had a huge game. And isn't he looking – it's amazing how a kid can look like he's going to end up being like a 4th or a 5th round draft pick, decides to come back one more year, and this guy's a 1st round draft pick. There's just no doubt about it. If some of the quarterbacks that have been first – if Mac Jones is a 15th pick in the draft, Kenny Pickett will be – especially this year, it's basically Howell and Pickett as the top 2 guys you would think. He doesn't have 5 guys that he's got to compete with. I could see Pickett ending up in the top 10. The way he's going right now.
He could end up in the top 10. He's having that kind of a year. He's breaking the Dan Marino records in Pittsburgh. That's a lot on your resume, and he's doing a terrific job doing just that. He just happens to have the worst name a quarterback could have if you're going to be a National Football League player, because they'll tear that apart whenever he has a bad football game. But
Yeah.
he's enjoying the ride nonetheless. We saw this last year with Pittsburgh. When he played, they were good. When he didn't, they were bad. So it goes hand in hand with his rise up the leaderboard as far as the National Football League draft is concerned.
And what's interesting about this matchup with Miami, and I did not take the game, is because of the fact that when Pickett was a freshman, and I remember that game well, Miami was undefeated, and Pickett and the freshman quarterback helped to upset Miami late in the year. And since then, Miami has beaten Pittsburgh the last 3 years straight up and against the spread. So it's almost like, they haven't forgotten. Plus, Miami's 21-3 lifetime against Pittsburgh with that one of those losses when they were undefeated. But Miami's playing better. They've lost their last 3 games have been decided by a total of 6 points. So their young quarterback Van Dyke is getting more and more experience. So the time to go against Miami was a few weeks ago. Now, the more and more experience he has, the more dangerous he becomes. And then you get the letdown possibility. It's a big spread. I just decided, look, I'm not going against Pitt after the fact I've taken him recently, but I just can't take him this week against Miami because they seem to have, maybe this is going to be a little bit of a closer game than Pitt's going to want, because Pitt has an outside chance of being a team to keep an eye on for a playoff spot.
Well, everything you mentioned here, I think Miami's a dangerous football team this week because of those reasons. Number one, the letdown after the Clemson victory. Number two, Miami is playing a lot better football right now. They haven't really been outplayed in too many football games this year. They have this tendency to keep games right close down to the vest, whoever scores last type of a football game. That series domination, I think, works in Miami's favor here as well. So I myself personally will be playing the points with Miami in this game.
Okay, and then Clemson... and you can see it in the guide, because it was something that I noticed early on when you take a look at the playbook guide, and it says it right here, right next to the name of Clemson, and this is under the Tigers playbook here. The Tigers have the nation's longest current streak, 127 games without losing consecutive games. Well, we are now up to 134. Will that streak end on Saturday? I think there's a chance. I really do. Because Clemson, they have done nothing this year. Okay, everybody wants to look at the Georgia game, and that's deservedly so, because look how good Georgia is now. But again, it's the first game of the season. I think if those two teams play again, I think it's a 3-touchdown performance from Georgia. I just don't think that game is even close because Clemson can't move the football offensively. They can do nothing offensively, basically, compared to what they used to be able to do. They've lost the stats in 5 of the 6 FBS games this season. And the fact that Florida State has won 3 straight, they're back to, they're feeling real good about themselves. I think this is a close football game. And I just think that maybe this is a great chance to go against Clemson and take the upset, take the 3-1 money line, because Clemson's playing for nothing. Nothing. They're going to have to get these kids who were recruited here to win championships, and they're going to have to get them to play for nothing. And I don't know if Dave Sweeney's going to be able to, and not saying he's not a good coach. I just don't know if he's going to be able to convince these kids to play football on Saturday just for pride. I just don't know.
Well, football is such a fickle game because it's largely dependent upon the momentum that you're playing with going into a football game. And there is absolutely none to be found on the Clemson side of this football game here. And I can completely get what you're saying about playing for nothing here, but you're kicking a horse when he's down right now. And sometimes when you get down to the level that Clemson's at, you have to ask yourself, is there any value in trying to make a case for Clemson, who is laying half of the points in this game that they would have played at the beginning of the football season?
Sure.
And it's not because Florida State's playing all this great football this year. It's just because of this perception of Clemson this football season. This offense has completely gone MIA. We don't know what's going on with this Clemson offense here. I can't lay points with Clemson in a game like this here either, but I certainly won't want to play Florida State in a game like this because there is absolutely no value in backing the Seminoles in this game.
And look, Clemson 0-6 against the spread. So no matter how many times we can just keep moving further down the season and they keep disappointing and the numbers keep coming down, they still can't cover the spread. So, I just look. I know I'm taking the outright upset, and I'm going to gamble on that. But I kind of feel obviously pretty good about the 10 because I don't even know if Clemson's going to score 20 points in this game.
Well, their offense has proven that they're going to have a difficult time doing that. I think the permissive Florida State defense will allow them to do just that in a contest like this. They are at home, as you mentioned here in the game as well. But as we wrote in our newsletter, Clemson is not UMass. Okay,
No.
everybody, and everybody wants to look at them as UMass as being this most disappointing team in college football this year because they're 0-6 against the spread, and they haven't been competitive in any football game other than the season opener, which they didn't win that football game or beat the spread as well either. So, again, I can't do it because of the value in a situation like this, and you're not using a quality team in Florida State. You're using an okay team in Florida State who may or may not be in a bowl game by the end of the year.
Okay, and then another game that I am not taking, but it's a big game, and I can't take this game because I've been cashing tickets on Michigan State almost every week, and I've also cashed a lot of tickets on my favorite team, Michigan. So I'm completely staying away from this one, especially because Michigan's a 4-point favorite, and I could see this game potentially coming down to a 3-point game, sort of like the Michigan-Nebraska game that was a 3-point game. Michigan can wind up winning the game and not covering. I can see that. So I'm completely staying away from the game. But I've said this all season, and I still believe it's true. And I don't think Michigan State has the talent or will be the team to knock them off. I just believe this is a different Michigan team. He's got a new staff. There's a completely new feeling with this particular program this season. They're running their offense completely differently. Because of that, I think that they're gonna escape a very close game here. They're gonna lose eventually. Maybe it's Ohio State, maybe it's before that, but I don't see Mel Tucker in his second year knocking off this team right now that Jim Harbaugh has that is clearly his best team. But it should be a really good game. This is one of those games that you can't miss. I mean, this is what college football is all about.
It's a rivalry game, and for sure you're going to get the best effort from both of these football teams here. Michigan State's had this propensity for knocking Michigan out, and this would be a cruel knockout if they were to suffer this, because right now it appears that Michigan could be headed to that final game of the season against the Buckeyes, which would be one heck of a football game up in Ann Arbor, where the Ohio State would probably go in there about a 3-point favorite if they were to play this particular week. So that's what Harbaugh doesn't want to have to face. Yes,
that's a lot of. See, that's the thing. I hope that if Michigan gets to play Ohio State undefeated, I hope that spread is not that close because they don't deserve to be. They don't. It's my team, but until they can at least get close to Ohio State, I would jump all over that line today and jump on Ohio State if it was only a 3-point game.
Well, that's today, but if they got to that case and they were undefeated, you'd maybe be making a different case for Michigan because they are undefeated and they do have a lot of revenge in the football game. And the reason that they would be undefeated is because of their defense, which is really, really good this year, probably second only to Georgia's thus far this football season. As far as this game is concerned here, I'm a little bit concerned about Harbaugh here because he absolutely disappears like Casper the Ghost on the road against undefeated football teams. He's been there 9 times in his career. He's only won 1 game, and he's covered the spread only 2 times doing just that. And with all this history for Michigan State in the contest here, an upset does not surprise me in this game.
You see, and that's kind of like what my point is that, and maybe I'll be wrong, and in a couple of years Harbaugh will leave Michigan and it'll be a complete failure. But if this is the season of the turning point for the program, then sooner or later he's going to be beating these teams on the road that are undefeated. Sooner or later that is going to completely change if he can get the program turned around the way he was supposed to in the beginning. And I think he's got that type of team that some of these historical trends that have been against him will turn to his favor. The one thing he's got going for him is the road team has won 5 of the last 6 in the series. But Michigan State, even though they have beaten Michigan a good number of times in this series lately, they're 2-0 straight up and against the spread as a dog this year. But they've lost the stats in 3 of their last 4 games. Both teams combined 11-2 against the spread this year.
Both of these teams are really sharp defensively. I mentioned Michigan, and they've held 4 teams to season low yards this year. Don't discredit the Michigan State defensive effort this year as well. Last year, they coughed up 35 points a game. This year, they've allowed more than 21 points only one time this football season here. So this could well be a boxing match, a defensive boxing match. I'm going to look for a low-scoring contest in this game as well.
It's going to be interesting to see what the quarterback situation happens here at Michigan, because I think next year, and I know it's not going to happen, but I think next year, under normal circumstances, Dylan McCaffrey should be the starting quarterback of this team, because he would make this offense explosive. He fits perfectly with their running game, and because he's got the running ability, and he can throw the football. Something McNamara is, I think, he might even be a good pro McNamara, but he's got no mobility. He doesn't have a really good deep passing game at this point, and he's kind of limited, even though he never turns the ball over, which is why he's a perfect fit for this type of offense. But you put McCaffrey back there next year, the problem is, I don't know if they will. They might just go back to McNamara, because McNamara has like 3 more years of eligibility left. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that quarterback situation plays out in the next couple of years at Michigan.
Well, that's a kind of a dilemma that John Harbaugh looks forward to. He'd rather have that than wondering who a quarterback can be to step up. So
Jake Ruddock.
That'll be interesting crossroads for sure.
Yeah, and some of those crappy quarterbacks that he had there, which is another reason they have struggled. Okay, let's talk about a couple of my top picks now, back-to-back here, starting with Georgia against Florida as a 2-touchdown, 14.5-point favorite. And I'm going with the Bulldogs here. Because not only are they the best team in college football, but they're in a revenge spot. They lost by 16 last year to Florida, so you know they want Florida bad. Florida's got some... Look, this Richardson kid at quarterback for Florida might be somebody to keep an eye on in the future, but it's not the future. And I can't imagine, because he's going to play part-time in this game, I just can't imagine how these quarterbacks are going to match up against this Georgia defense. I just don't see it. I don't see how. I think it's going to be ugly at times, and I think Georgia's going to capitalize on turnovers and things of that nature. And by the way, 6 of the last 7 games in this series have been decided by 14 points or more. So if you're thinking, oh, big-time series matchup, 14 points is a lot to give up, the series situation tells you don't worry about it, because the last 7 years, most of these games have been blowouts.
My concern about the Georgia Bulldogs are a couple. Number one, yes, there is revenge, but Florida's dominated the series in the past. They've won 22 of the last 29 games on the scoreboard. So it's not like if they beat this football team, it's something new to Florida. The pressure's squarely on Georgia in the game, the number 1 undefeated team in the country. I don't like the fact that they have a week of rest to get ready for this game. That's that momentum breaker for undefeated teams who have a week of rest and are favored away from home in games like this. It oftentimes destroys perfect seasons. The other side of the equation for me to the Florida Gators is they are one of only 5 teams in all of college football this year that has out-yarded every opponent they've played. That makes them the best 4-3 team in the country, the Florida Gators here. And for that reason, Georgia has to be concerned about what the possibilities that Florida brings onto this football playing field here. I don't like the 2-headed quarterback situation going on with Georgia at all. If JT Daniels deems he's healthy enough to play, I think it interrupts the momentum for this Georgia Tech football team with Stetson Bennett IV, who sounds like a law firm at quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs. So, I'm nitpicking here, but to me, I love the stat that Florida has not been out-yarded by anybody thus far this football season here, and for that reason, I got to grab up the points.
Why? It's so ridiculous when you hear that, is Dan Mullen in trouble at Florida? Who are you getting?
No way.
I mean, who's coming here? Are you getting Urban Meyer back? I mean, seriously, who's coming here that Dan Mullen's in trouble? It's just so ridiculous. I mean, the expectations, obviously, because of what they used to be. But Dan Mullen, don't you just remember who he took over for? Things weren't going very well when Dan Mullen took over. So you have to give him a little bit of a break when he has a new quarterback. He just had his Trask. He just made Trask a pretty high draft pick, which a lot of people were kind of surprised that Trask was actually drafted that high, but that's what Dan Mullen does. Dan Mullen's a very good football coach. Look, he needs to fire his defensive coordinator. Don't get me wrong. That has to change. That is a big issue. Grantham has been terrible for them. But Dan Mullen, I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the biggest concern for that is the preparation for the fact that Florida could be a 4-4 football team
Sure.
after this game, and now suddenly out come the Mullen Wolves. Okay,
Yeah.
all of a sudden 4 losses, unacceptable at Florida. That kind of rhetoric. So that's what you're hearing right now.
All right, now let's talk about my other top pick of the week, and that is going to be Iowa State as a 7-point favorite against West Virginia. I just love the way Iowa State's playing right now. Early on in the season, they always get off to a slow start. They usually always, remember, that they're always favored against Iowa. They always lose to Iowa. So that's behind them. And Brock Purdy got up to such a bad start. I was just, what is going on with this guy? I mean, he was supposed to have a breakout year, and he's just been awful. But if you take a look at Brock Purdy now, since the Baylor loss, he's 66 of 80. 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. Iowa State, talking about the stats, Iowa State 7-0 as far as that's concerned. They have the 3rd-ranked defense in the country going up against the 72nd-ranked offense in the country in West Virginia. I just love the way Iowa State's dominated the series. They've beaten West Virginia the last 3 years by 110-34. I just love this matchup. I think Iowa State is just steaming ahead right now, and they're also definitely a playoff sleeper, national championship playoff sleeper, if they can run the table, knock off Oklahoma, and so forth. Matter of fact, I think if there are some one-loss teams and Iowa State does run the table and win the Big 12 championship, I think they might be in the playoffs.
Well, they would have to be a major contender. They'd have to hope, obviously, that the Wake Forest story doesn't materialize. It'd be difficult to put them in ahead of them. But, the truth of the matter is they may well be the best team in the Big 12 right now, the way that they're playing football here. And we saw that coming into this season at the beginning of the season. Matt Campbell brought this tremendously loaded, deeply experienced football team to the table. And statistically, they've done nothing wrong thus far this football season. I'm with you. I think they're the much superior team in this football matchup here. And run that stat, that Brock Purdy stat by me one more time. That was pretty impressive.
66 of 80. 7 touchdowns, no picks.
Since when?
Since the Baylor loss.
Wow. Pretty. That's very, very impressive.
That's very Purdy.
Yes, it is. Very pretty. Good play on there.
Yeah. Now, the other one of the other upsets I like this week, I figured we'd cover this, is Louisville against North Carolina State. We know North Carolina State's a real good home team, and so I was a little bit concerned with this, but I just love the way Louisville's playing right now. And I think sometimes we forget how good of a coach Satterfield is, and I think we've forgotten. Especially after you get the bad loss against Ole Miss to start the season, and things aren't kind of going all that well, but they're just playing the best that they've played under Satterfield. If you look at it, they lose to Ole Miss. They lost to undefeated Wake Forest on the road by 3. They lose to Virginia by 1 with 22 seconds left. That's how they've lost football games this year. And they've been winning some pretty impressive games too. So I like them in this spot. I like the points at 7, and I think that why not just go a little extra mile, take the 2-1 money line as well.
Well, it's hard to disagree with that because they are playing a lot better than perhaps their record does indicate, and Satterfield is a really, really good head coach. Playing maybe their best football since he's taken over this program here. My biggest concern is if you look inside the midweek alert here, NC State's playing some pretty good football themselves. They're 6-1 in the stats thus far this football season, out-yarding opponents over 100 yards a football game. Then you got Louisville just 3-7 to the spread their last 10 road football games. So, these things can go yin and yang when you're looking at the stats and things like that, and I can see exactly where you're coming with Louisville here. Probably a really under-the-radar type football team, and they'll probably end up being, if they win this game, the kind of a team that no one will want to play moving forward here because they are beginning to emerge and playing some really good football.
Yeah, this is that game. This is that game that is going to tell us whether or not Louisville is really stepping up or, it's a good season, but they're a year away. So we'll find out because, North Carolina State's a very tough home team. No question. They're talented. Okay, and then the last 2 games that I wanted to talk about not marquee games, but games I like. Middle Tennessee, yes, Middle Tennessee. They're a 13.5-point favorite against Southern Miss. The reason I chose this had more to do with how bad Southern Miss is, and I'm only having to give up 14 points. So check all this out. Southern Miss has not scored more than 19 points in all of their 6 FBS games this year. They're 0-6 straight up and against the spread versus FBS teams. Let's see, yes. And if you take a look at Middle Tennessee, let's remove UConn, who they blew out, by the way, 44-13 from their schedule. Let's remove them. UConn was because they're 1-8. We take a look at the schedule Middle Tennessee has faced. That means without UConn, the record of the opponents that they have faced is 25-12. So they have played some very tough teams. When they had to play with their bad team, they blew them out. And a lot of this is because of Chase Cunningham. Since Chase Cunningham has taken over a quarterback, the offense has been completely different. And get this, Middle Tennessee is the number 1 turnover margin team in the nation at plus 13. Southern Miss is at -8, number 124. Those collide. Southern Miss's offense is terrible. Middle Tennessee should score a lot of points. Unless Middle Tennessee just comes into this game just completely asleep. This team's terrible. We're overlooking them. Then I think they should blow them out.
You bring up a great point here because Southern Miss is really, really a bad football team. And deservedly to the point where they're being booted out of the Conference USA and going to be moving into the Sun Belt Conference, okay? Yeah. You can't get much lower than that and still keep your FBS credibility. But this program, I've never seen a program that's bottomed out so quickly as Southern Miss has here in the past 4 football seasons. They were consistently a bowl team each and every year for like 15 years in a row before all of a sudden everybody packed up and left out of this football program here. This is a great spot for Middle Tennessee State. You mentioned the turnover situation, plus to the minus, all those good things. And I am a big, big Rick Stockstill fan from Middle Tennessee State. He wins football games like this. He beats the teams he's supposed to beat. He'll beat Southern Miss in this football game, and I will be surprised like you if he doesn't take home the money in doing it just as well.
Yeah, didn't Southern Miss go through that situation where they were really bad, like for a few years, and then they brought in a coach? Was it Monken? Yes. Because remember, Fedora had them going really well for a long time.
Yes, he
Larry
did.
Fedora.
Yes, he did.
Then he leaves, and Ellis Johnson comes in, and they don't win a game. Remember that?
He butchered it up there for sure.
So then Monken comes back, and after just a couple of bad seasons, he's got them on a nice little roll again. And then Jay Hobson took over, and things were okay for a little while, but then they have slowly started to the point where they are right now. Look, they have a new coach. It's going to take some time, but things are just not good. And they got Frank Gore Jr. there. I'm not sure how much longer he's going to probably stay with the transfer rule, So, and then the final game I wanted to talk about was Navy. It's the game tonight against Tulsa, and I'm gonna ride Navy on the upset here as a 3-1 plus 325 on the upset. I do like obviously the spread at plus 11, and I just like the way Navy's playing right now. Early on in the season, things just did not go well for them, but they've turned it around. They've covered 4 of the last 5. What an impressive loss to Cincinnati. I mean, you only lost by 7 against Cincinnati. They're 3-0 straight up and against the spread at Tulsa over their last 3 as these two teams have been playing as AAC opponents. So I just think Navy's on a nice little roll here, and I think they might be able to surprise Tulsa tonight.
Yeah, they're catching a Tulsa football team that's going downward rapidly like the temperatures up north. And Navy has refused to throw in the towel, which is really, really a trait of Ken Niumatalolo, their head coach. They've had some tough times the past year plus running into this, but that was a terrific effort that they put up against Navy, and I think it will refortify their belief in what it is that Niumatalolo is doing here with this program here. I'm with you. I think Navy takes Tulsa right down to the wire, and if you play them in a money line and cash that ticket, I'm not going to be surprised.
Okay, so we are going to be entering, believe it or not, when we talk again, Week 10 next week. And at least we got an extra week in the NFL. So it'll be week 9 next week in the NFL, but we got that extra week, so that's good. And then next week when we talk, I think we're going to talk horse racing before we talk NFL and college football, because the Breeders' Cup is next week. That's a Friday Saturday affair. So we're trying to schedule a Thursday and Friday show with John Hardoon, so we can take, because there's going to be so many good races. We do not want to limit it to 2. So we're going to try to do a couple of races on Thursday and a couple of races on Friday. So if that holds true, unless we wind up doing it on Wednesday, who knows? But bottom line is we have a lot of horse racing that we're going to tackle next week as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. The Breeders' Cup is really, really a good time to be handicapping races, and I love nothing better than having to hear what John Hardoon has to say about the Breeders' Cup.
All right, Mark. So playbooksports.com, the Major League Baseball season is into the World Series. Better yet, college basketball season is a little less than 2 weeks away.
Oh boy, just as you said that, Greg, it reminds me, I've got to call the Gamblers Book Club in Las Vegas and order my college blue ribbon basketball book. It's a must-have if you're serious about handicapping basketball games. The blue ribbon, I've been getting it each and every year, I think for 30 years now.
Wow.
And just as you mentioned it to me, I got the heebie-jeebies thinking about the fact the season's going to start and I don't have my blue ribbon book. So that's the call I'll be making next after we wrap up this show.
Fair enough. Pass that one along to me as well. Let me know how to order one.
Sure.
Mark, I appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you again next week.
And my pleasure as always, Greg. Be well, stay safe. Take care, and I'll catch you next week.